Hey guys, welcome back to Wix Fix. I hope you're having a fantastic day. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys around Editor X. Now that Editor X is officially released, I feel like I can start creating more content about it. But let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is come up to create a new site. Then it's going to ask us which platform we want to use. So we're going to choose Editor X. And then it's going to ask you what kind of website you want to create, but I'm just going to skip this. And it's going to give me an option to choose a blank template. And then it's going to open up a blank website in Editor X. So when we first pull up Editor X, this is what we're going to see. If we hover over the artboard, we're going to see a few things highlight. If we hover over the top, we're going to see this green area called the header. And if we hover over the bottom, we're going to see the footer. And then the middle is obviously a section of the page. So if we look at the artboard, it's going to look pretty similar to the classic editor. However, you're not going to notice those two lines that we have to keep content inside. In fact, if we look at the header, there's content all the way to the left, and then there's a menu element all the way to the right. So this is one of the coolest things about Editor X, is that we no longer have to confine all of our content in between two lines. We can put stuff wherever we want, and we just have to manually make sure that it fits on all the breakpoints. Speaking of breakpoints, if we come up here to the top, we're going to see the 3 breakpoints it comes with by default. Now, if you remember the classic editor, the only one that we have on classic editor is the desktop and mobile. But here we also have a tablet version. On top of that, if that wasn't enough, we can also press this 3-dot icon that says customize breakpoints. You can customize the screen widths to be whatever you want, or you can actually add up to 3 more breakpoints. Now in the classic editor, we had all of these bubbles over here on the left-hand side for pages, adding, and stuff like that. Now all of that is up here in the toolbar. So if we come up to this plus icon, this is where you add elements. It has a quick add section where, it has all the basic stuff that you would need. And then down here, there's compositions, which is basically pre-made or pre-designed sections. There's also layout tools, which I'll get into in another video. But this has, boxes, it has grids, has layouters, repeaters, and light boxes. And then here's all the other basic stuff like more text variations, more button variations, and just more variations of each of these things. And then down below that is basically Wix's internal stuff or services. So like blog, store, bookings, events, members, and content manager. Next to the add icon is the layers. So this one is actually really cool, and I'll kind of give you guys an example of this later on. But in the classic editor, the layer panel is very different in the sense that order doesn't really matter. But if we see here, when I drag this section above the header, it's going to move this section above the header just like we want. So it's a lot more customizable, and it actually makes sense in this editor. Next to the layers is the masters. So here we have a header and we have a footer. Think of this as sections that's going to appear on every single page. So headers and footers are typically consistent across your entire website, but maybe you want to add, a different header. So we could duplicate this one, and then we could come to the layers panel, double click this, and change this to home header. Now if we come back to the masters, this one's going to be the home header, and maybe we want a different header for the rest of the pages. So we can go press this 3-dot icon and press show on, and we can choose the pages that this is going to go on, this header. And if we don't want it on the home page, we can just select off of it, just like that. Next to the masters icon is the pages. So here is basically exactly like the other classic editor. We can just add a page, we can name it whatever we want. If we press this 3-dot icon, we have the settings, SEO, social share, and basically very similar options as the classic editor. But one really cool feature is we can set it as a dynamic page. There have been plenty of times in the past where I create a page and realize that I kind of want it to be a dynamic page. And so I can either create, a dynamic page and try to copy and paste everything over, or, I just try to make it work on the classic editor. However, here in Editor X, I can just switch it over to a dynamic page really quickly. And then if you have CMS on your website, which is the content manager, there will also be an option down here to add a dynamic page. Next to the pages icon is the theme manager. This is basically exactly like the theme manager from the classic editor. You can, change the fonts, the colors, and sizes for each of your headings and paragraphs. And then if we click over to the colors tab, we can set the colors for the website as well. Next to that is the app marketplace, basically exactly the same as the classic editor, so I'm not going to cover it too much. And then next to that is the content manager, where you can create collections and dynamic pages and everything like that. In the middle, next to the breakpoints that we've already covered, is going to be the page selection. And then if we select manage pages, it's going to open up the pages panel for us. To the right of the breakpoints is the width of your website. Now, I don't typically use this that much. Typically what I do is I just drag in these bars right here. And the cool thing about these bars is once you hit a different breakpoint, you'll kind of see these like guidelines showing you that you've hit another breakpoint. It basically lets you visualize how you're editing it based on the breakpoint you're on. Over here to the right, you have the undo and redo button, same as the old editor. Next to that is the comments. So maybe you're a freelancer making a website for a client. Maybe they don't like this logo, so they can click the logo, press this little comment icon, and then just type in a comment in the bottom right. And then to the right of the comments icon is the inspector, which is basically just the toolbar from the classic editor. You have the align section, and then you have like width, height, and stuff like that. You have position with margin, and certain elements have padding on there as well. And then there's also different tabs. So if we switch over to this tab right here, there's design. So maybe we don't want this to be full opacity. We can change that. We can add drop shadow. And of course, different elements have different settings that you can change. And then to the right of that is the hover interactions. But we will get into this in a different video. The next thing I want to show you guys is some of the features that are different from the classic editor to Editor X. For example, we can go up here, press add, we can go to quick add and just add an image, or we can just right click, do quick add, and do an image just like that. Now in the classic editor, when we select a section or a strip, some options will pop up to say change strip background. In Editor X, it works a little bit differently. So we add an image, and then we can just press this stretched icon, and it'll stretch it to the full width of that section. Now maybe this section isn't large enough for you. So what you can do is select the section, come over here into the inspector tab, and we can set the minimum height to maybe like 800 pixels. And then when we stretch the picture, it's gonna fill the whole screen. The next thing I wanna show you guys is stacks. So stacks are kind of similar to groups from the classic editor. However, stacks are meant to keep your website responsive. So when I select all of the text, you're gonna notice two options. One is group and one is stack. Group is exactly the same as the classic editor, but it doesn't really give us any advantage. If we press stack, you're gonna notice it's gonna create a new element called a stack. And you're gonna notice that these kind of have lines that symbolize spacing in between the stack. And the reason that stacks are so important is because when I resize the screen, you're gonna see that the text pushes the button down so it doesn't overlap and look really messy. For example, if I didn't use a stack and I brought in the website, you're gonna see that the button is no longer visible because the text has shrunken down so much that it's gone over the button, which is exactly what we don't want. I'll be making a video pretty soon all about stacks and everything you'll need to know for them. So be sure to subscribe if you're interested in learning more about stacks and Editor X. The next thing I want to show you is how to add strips, or as they call them in Editor X, sections. If we click on a section, you're going to notice that there's a plus icon at the top and then there's a plus icon at the bottom. If we click one of those, it's going to give us an option to choose a layout. We can choose a blank one, which is similar to this one right here, or we can choose a grid or layouter. For For this first option, we'll do grid. Now a little pop-up is going to show and ask us what kind of grid that we want on our website. For this example, let's do the 2x1. We'll press OK. Now you're going to notice this little line right here. We can manually drag this line out however we want, or we can press adjust grid, edit grid, and here we can drag these out. And then here you can also edit the grid a little bit more by adding rows or adding columns, however you want to do it. So for this example, let's go ahead and just add maybe 2 more rows. And you're going to see these are really small. So what I want to do is click on the icon and we'll make it 250 pixels high. And we'll do the same thing for this one right here. And we'll do the same thing for the last one, just like that. And then we'll go ahead and press done. Now we're going to see we have 6 sections. If we right click, do quick add and add an image, and we drag this image wherever we want and press stretched, you're going to notice it takes up whatever section that we had the image over. So for example, if we only bring it over these 2 rows and we press stretched, it's only going to take up these 2 rows. For this example, let's just go ahead and make it cover these 2 right here. And then what we can do is come up to add, go out to layout, we'll do layouter, and we'll just drag out a layouter right over these 2 sections right here, and we'll press stretched. Now you can see that it created a layouter where we can put content inside, and then we can also increase the width to be whatever we want, and we can kind of customize this layouter however we see fit. And then we can select one if we don't want it and just press delete, and it'll automatically resize itself to fit the section. And then we can add images or text or buttons, whatever we want in these sections. And that brings us to our next point. If we add a section and we just add a layouter, here it's going to allow us to choose what kind of layout we want. We'll choose this one right here. And this is our next section. Now I'm going to come over here and change the color of some of these. And then if I go over to the tablet view, here I can just rearrange this however I want. So maybe I want the brown one to be more prominent on the tablet view. If we go back up to the desktop view, you're going to notice the blue is more prominent and the brown was back where I left it initially. But then if we go over to the phone breakpoint, we're going to see that the brown one is above and more prominent than the blue. And that's because everything moves downward. So for example, if we add a button to desktop, it'll show up on tablet. However, if we're on tablet, and we choose to add a paragraph into the brown one, if we go down to the mobile view, we're going to see that paragraph. But if we go back up to the desktop view, there is no paragraph. And that's because Editor X allows us to add stuff to different and smaller breakpoints without it showing up on the larger one. So it is important that you first make your website on the desktop view and then edit the site however you want on the smaller breakpoints, and maybe that's including adding specific buttons on tablet view, or maybe that's adding a button to mobile view that you don't want on desktop or maybe tablet view. One really cool feature that we can see is when we added this paragraph to the tablet view, it automatically added it to mobile view, but maybe we don't want this on our mobile view. So we can right click and say do not display. So now this paragraph does not show up on mobile, it does not show up on desktop, but it does show up on tablet view where we added it. But let's say we made a mistake and we actually do want to add it to mobile. We can come up to our layers panel, we can choose the item, and we're going to see this little display icon, and we can click it, and now the paragraph is going to show up again. But let's say we added something on accident to the tablet view and we want to add it to our desktop view. So what we can do is come over to tablet view, right click, and say use on all breakpoints. And you're going to see those kind of highlight a little bit. And if we go back to the desktop view, we're going to see the paragraph that we added. So this was a very basic rundown of Editor X. I'm going to be making a lot of tutorials on this very soon that go into a lot more detail. So if you are interested in that, be sure to subscribe and like this video to let me know that you're interested in more Editor X tutorials. Thank you guys again, and I'll see you on the next one.